Hi, I'm Sierra. I'm not entirely sure what to talk about whenever I'm going through this video. Um, Obviously, I'm supposed to show you some step-by-step, or at least, kind of explain some of the process. Hopefully I have enough to talk about to take up the entire length of this video. It's about 10 minutes, I think. I guess first I can explain, you might notice that there's some tone coloring underneath it. I start out with some Faber-Castell pencils to kind of map out basically where my highlights and my shading is going to be. I used blue in this particular case since this character is a little bit more on the pale side, and he's got cooler sort of undertones. So I used the blue to map out the shadows and the values on him. I still used yellow for the highlighting. I'm not entirely sure I like that. I might end up going back and erasing that out. But in the meantime, we're going to keep that and kind of, I guess, say that there's a warm light source. And what I'm doing is just kind of going over again with some of the same colors to darken it, since you can layer Copic markers, which is really cool. I'm actually warming up a lot more to Copic markers over the years. I used to be strictly Prismacolors with a few Copics, but lately I've been using a lot more of the Copic markers. I've warmed up a lot to their skin tones too. I used to hate their skin tones a lot, but I'm really starting to like how they can layer. They layer a lot better than the Prismacolor markers do, as you can see. I'm actually kind of happy with how the undercolor tones with the pencils turned out in this picture. I'm relatively new to this particular coloring technique, and in the last few pieces I was afraid it was kind of muddy looking, kind of mottled almost, a little bit chunky, but it's starting to come out a little bit smoother. It helps that I can go back and erase also a little bit later too, because you'll see that there are some bits here that get a little mottled and chunky looking, and I can fix that pretty easily later. See, I had something to talk about and then I got lost. No, but really a lot of what I do with skin coloring is just a series of going over areas constantly. The most difficult part for me is mapping out where my lighting and my shadows are going to be, so that's partly why I use those colored pencils at the beginning. What I have been doing for a long time is printing out a separate piece, and I would just go over it with pencil in the areas that I wanted to emphasize shading. It's kind of a wasteful process, but visually it did help me. I really have to, I wish I could remember the channel name. I started watching this channel recently on YouTube, and she is so helpful. I think it's Kiara's Studio. I'm pretty sure that was who it is, but she has some amazing coloring tutorials, and she's the one that I ended up getting the idea from to color underneath the markers with pencil first. Before that, it never occurred to me at all. I was kind of like, oh my god, what kind of magic is this? But no, it's actually ended up being a really useful aid, so I'm really glad I came across that video. If you guys have any inclination, you should go check it out. I'll see if I can remember exactly. Well, I've got her in my likes, so I can drop a link to her stuff too if you guys are interested in seeing her videos. She's so much better than I am. You'll probably like it better. And here, it doesn't really show up as well with the yellow highlights, but I do still like going over with white to kind of give a little bit of a sharper definition to some of the shadowed areas. And kind of make some of the highlights pop a little bit more. Like I said, the yellow is kind of preventing some of the lighting that I normally like. I'm still a little bit on the fence about it, so I might go back and erase that, kind of like you see here. I'm erasing some of the muddier underlying stuff, going through and smoothing it out a little bit more. Oh, there's something I could talk about. Okay, what you see that I'm doing here is, okay, what's really cool about Copics, if you've never used Copic markers, or even Prismacolor markers, the nice higher quality alcohol markers in general, what's really, really nice about them is not only do they layer, but they can blend. So what I was doing there was using a darker color first, and then I went over with one of the lighter colors to kind of blend it out and smooth it a little bit. So you can see that there are some little darker areas in the shadows, and they stand out a lot, and then you kind of go over with one of the lighter colors and it evens things out, but it still gives a darker area to the shadows. It's really cool, and it's something that I've been getting a little bit better with over time. So you got some areas that are really sharp, contrasting shadows, and then like you can see down here at the jawline, it's a little bit softer and kind of fades out, gives him some shape to his face. Where you can see the cheekbones, you can see the highlighting on the cheekbones, and you can see some of the darker definitions going into the jawline and on the cheeks. Yeah. I'm gonna let this kind of go for a little bit, enjoy some of the music, and then we'll get to the hair, and I'll kind of explain some of the hair process after that. Okay, now we're going to start getting into the coloring of the hair pretty soon. I'm just kind of finishing up here with some of the, erasing some of the underneath pencil. Kind of, again, smooth out the color a little bit more, make it look a little bit better. Deepening some of the shadows a little bit with some of the darker colors, and then blending it out with some of the lighter colors again. And I apologize in advance because my hand is going to get in the way of the hair coloring. So, sorry about that. No, I'm just going to say right now, I'm out of practice when it comes to coloring blonde hair. Because I don't know if you've seen my art, but I don't have a whole lot of blonde characters. So please bear with me if it does kind of turn out looking a little bit funky. I'm really happy with the way the skin looks in this picture, so I don't think I'm going to be redoing it just, because of the hair. So I'll kind of deal with some funky looking hair. See, right here, my hand's all in the way. But what I do when I'm coloring hair, now short hair's not as fun for me as long hair is, but it's still, I can get some of the shine in that I want. You see I can I can talk, I promise. No, what I did was I erased some of the underline guideline highlights from the pencils, but I'm going to fix that in a second because I ended up liking it. But yeah, I leave an area kind of light for whenever I'm doing highlights. And it's for whenever, if I'm doing darker hair, that's when I would fill in usually the lighter color and kind of blend it in a little bit better. But in the meantime, I just leave it light for this, and I'm going to kind of shade it back in with the color pencil. And what I'm doing for the low lights is I was using, it was like a brick beige, I think it is, because, blonde hair does tend to have a little bit browner sort of low lights, and it's a little bit darker at the roots. I know you're not supposed to use yellow for blonde, but again, I don't have many blonde characters, so my supply colors is a little bit short. So I used a cashmere yellow. Hopefully it's not too jarring of a yellow for the blonde. So what I'm going and just doing here is, again, what I was doing earlier. I'm just kind of blending out the colors to make them flow together a little bit better, so they don't stand out and look all chunky and everything. Now what I'm going to use a little bit later on with the highlight section is I'm going to use a colorless blender, and I'm going to tell you right now, that's not what you think it is. Well, unless you already know what it is, in which case disregard. I had to learn the hard way. A colorless blender is not what I thought it was. It's more of like an eraser almost. But yeah, it's actually, now in cases like where I've got this, blank area and then some color going into it, it helps really well with bleeding into each other. So it does blend well if you don't have two different colors that you're trying to blend together. Please don't try that. It's going to make a mess. But overall, for not having done blonde hair in a while, I was pretty happy with how this turned out. Yeah, that's kind of basically this video. Sorry if it ends a little bit abruptly. It kind of ran out of time to talk. Shocking for me, actually. I do thank you very much for joining me on this, and if you want to see more walkthrough videos, like this is gonna be the last video I think where I'm gonna focus on skin color. So if you want to see some other stuff, let me know. I'm gonna probably do clothing next. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.